Hey folks, it is Paul here once again for Hookah.org with another video how-to. This one might look a little familiar to some of you because I did a very similar video for the contest that we were running. This is going to be how I make a mouth tip on my lathe. It was requested that I do a simpler mouth tip with maybe a little more detail shooting the actual process. So here we are. I figured those of you who didn't see that contest should also benefit from seeing this process, and you should probably also check out the contest that we have going on. We've got a new one going on every month, but I'll talk about that later. Anyways, I've got my square stock chucked up in my self-centering chuck here with my tailstock pulled up. Lock that down, tighten it up, lock it down, and it's ready to go. The first thing we do is round this out. Okay, now that this is rounded, which you can see it's nice and smooth, it's time to really look at the grain patterns for me and decide what shape I want to make. Happily, I'm all going to just go on an old template and mark this up and then do something kind of simple for you guys. I think you'll enjoy it though. Here's a little trick on the lathe, actually, that I think you guys might appreciate. You'll notice I put up marks for where I want to have my my angles, my bevels, my dips, and things like that. But if you want to make these visible, one of the best things you can do is just take your Sharpie or pencil many people use, line it up with that mark while you are stationary. And you will be able to get a perfect ring around the piece. It's pretty simple, but it really does help out on some of the more intricate things where you might not be able to remember all your bucks and dips and curves and things like that. Now that I've got that laid out, it's time to pull out what are my favorite tools, the skew chisels. These are basically just a very large razor that I'm going to now use to carve this down. Let's check that out. This will be the angle that goes into the actual hose. So we want that to have a decent taper on it. The rest of it, I mean, that's the only thing that really matters for a fixing. If you wanted to, you could drill a hole straight through this, just have that angle, and this would be a mouthpiece. It wouldn't be a particularly comfortable or interesting mouthpiece. And that's not what you're here for. You're here for something more interesting than that. Okay, as you can see, I've got my general shape roughed out, my tapers, my curves, my actual mouth tip. But you can see there's tool marks here. Now it's time to go back in and smooth this out with a nice sharp skew. I've increased the speed because the faster you're going, the smoother things get. So here we go. Okay, hopefully you can see how much of a shine that now has on it. That is the power of sharp tools. But even with that shine, I'm going to go back in now with some super fine polishing paper, and I'm going to turn this into something absolutely gorgeous. Next up is the polishing. Okay, for this I have turned my speed all the way down. Frame that up a little bit better. I'm using micro mesh sanding and polishing pads. I start at 1500. That's usually about as high as I need to go. The reason you turn the speed down is because these are so sensitive, the pads themselves, that you can actually burn them if you're going too quickly or press too hard. Now, I do a wet sanding, simply because I feel that it cuts better and gives me a better finish overall. And I'm going to do this just back and forth on low speed until it really polishes up to a near mirror finish. And then we'll move on to waxing. Time to do that polish. I've turned the speed back up because the whole idea of this is that you're using food grade beeswax and melting a very, very thin layer of it into the surface. So all I'm doing here is getting some wax on the piece. And I'll come back, make sure that there's plenty of it on there. Wax is cheap. And then I come back with my rag, which you can see here. And you want to make sure that there are absolutely no stray, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Threads or ends. So fold it up nicely. I like to roll it into a kind of tube like this, and then press it underneath. And you can watch as the wax melts, becomes liquid, soaks just a bit into the wood, and the excess is absorbed by the rag. That's the whole idea. It's just adding a nice food grade, not impervious, not waterproof, but shiny finish onto the outside of the wood. Okay. I hope you can see how beautifully shined up that is. I'll give you just a little bit of better light, how it's almost a reflective, squeaky finish. The next bet, or the next step, is to unlock the tailstock, pull it back, replace the tailstock, because this is a live center, with our keyless chuck. And I'm going to be putting a 3/8 inch Forstner bit into this chuck, as that is going to be what I'm going to drill through and add for draw. You can see that this will go through, and I usually have to come from the other side and meet in the center. Alright, everything is mounted up. Pull up the bit, make sure it's locked properly, and turn the lathe on. We're going to slowly inch in. You don't want to burn the wood, and you don't want your bit getting jammed. That could result in a relatively dangerous situation. What we have now is a beautifully made piece that has great airflow and will fit nicely in a hose. Now obviously the shapes for these are pretty much infinite. You want to use a wood that is non-toxic, food safe, and you don't want to use any sealers that aren't food safe either. Because remember, this is essentially an eating utensil, for a lack of a better way to describe it. But that's my general process. That's how I make mouth tips, and if you've got a lathe, follow your usual safety practices. Make sure to wear your eye protection, make sure to wear your breathing protection, and have fun. Try it out. And if you make anything like this, I want to see it. I would really love to see the projects of other people. Maybe we can trade some ideas. Anyways, that's it. This is Paul for Hookah.org saying thank you very much for joining us. Please go down below, like and subscribe. Make sure to give us that thumbs up and check out the forums. We've got lots of contests going on. Every month we have a posting contest sponsored by Social Smoke where you can earn yourself some gift certificates. So check those out on the forums, and I'll see you next time. Happy smoking.